Okay, contrastive analysis. Contrastive analysis is summed up by the following quote from Robert Lado. Those elements that are similar to his native language will be simple for him, and those elements that are different will be difficult. What can you say about that quote? I would probably say that it would be so much easier for me to learn Visayan or Ilocano than for me to learn Chinese. Learning Chinese and learning another Philippine language, I'm very, very sure that it would be a lot easier for you to learn the Philippine language than Chinese. Okay, so this quote from Robert Lado seems very logical, but we will find out in this discussion that it's not as straightforward, it's not as easy. Okay. I should get out of full exit full screen. Okay. So, contrastive analysis hypothesis is under the behaviorism school of thought, pioneered by B.F. Skinner, emphasizing the environment. Okay? And also emphasizing practice, because you develop habits by practicing. So language, according to behaviorism, is a set of habits. Learning a new language involves replacing old habits with new habits. So if you are a tennis player, focusing on using your arm, the strength of your muscles in your arm, and you're going to learn badminton, you need to change your old habit of using your arm for strength. Because in badminton, it's the wrist that you use for power, not the arm. Okay, so you replace old habits with new habits. You replace old language habits with new language habits. Now, contrastive analysis hypothesis is predictive. It tries to predict. Where the first language is different from the second language, there will be interference. Interference is a term in behaviorism in which the habits of the first language interferes with learning the habits of the new language. So where the first language is different from the second language, there will be interference. There will be interference from the first language. Where there is similarity, there will be ease. So it's very logical. In fact, Stockwell, Bowen, and Martin even went further by creating a hierarchy of difficulty. They have a hierarchy of difficulty. The most difficult for them is when there is a split. When the feature of the first language involves a split in the second language. For example, for English, it's the word for, but in Spanish, there are two for four. You have por and you have para. So which one should you use when you think of for? This is for Andy. So should I say por Andy or para Andy? Okay, so according to them, split is the most difficult. Let me illustrate using something in Tagalog. Okay, an English speaker trying to learn Tagalog would encounter some difficulty in translating the word fire, because in Tagalog, There's sunog and there's apoy. But in English, it's just fire. The fireman put out the fire. The boy put out the fire in the kitchen, in the stove. So you don't use sunog when the fire is in the stove. Okay? Sometimes you have to use sunog, sometimes you have to use apoy. So there's a split there. Now, for Filipinos trying to learn English, there's a problem when they translate sa, because sa, the equivalent in English could be any preposition, from, to, on, and so on. Okay, so Filipinos have problems with using the right preposition. Okay, let me ask you this. Let me give you an example. Fill in the blank. I asked a question, blank, the teacher. Could you type in the chat, in the chat for this Google Meet, the correct answer? What you think is the correct answer? I asked a question, blank, the teacher. So let me put the question. I asked a question, blank, the teacher. Okay, let me see. Some people said two. Many of you wrote two. I asked a question to the teacher. I asked a question with the teacher. I asked a question from the teacher. I asked a question for the teacher. So the correct answer is of. I asked a question. I asked a question of the teacher. So how is it of? Why is it of? It's idiomatic. When we say idiomatic, it's not based on a rule. Okay? It's idiomatic. I asked a question of the teacher. So it's not to, it's not with, it's of. The answer, the reason is it's idiomatic. It's something that you cannot give a rule for. So if you feel that something couldn't have a rule in English, then probably it's idiomatic. Okay, like saying the moon shines bright tonight. Instead of saying the moon shines brightly, native speakers say the moon shines bright tonight. They don't put an ly. That's idiomatic. Okay. The same thing with fill up a container, fill in a blank or a gap, and fill out a form. You don't fill up a form, you fill out a form. Those things are idiomatic. And they illustrate split. Okay? They illustrate split, which many Filipinos find difficult, and many other language learners, according to what's his name? According to Stockwell and company. Okay, so that's the most difficult, split. The second most difficult feature is when there's something new in the language, in the target language, in the second language, that's not found in the first language. An example for learners of English would be subject-verb agreement, gender on pronouns, he, she, it, and backshifting. Backshifting is how you report what somebody said. For example, if Carlos said, this is what Carlos said, I ate the sandwich. If I report that, Carlos said he had eaten the sandwich. I will not say Carlos said he ate the sandwich. That's wrong because that's not backshifting. So if you're interested in the concept of backshifting, I have a video on that. You can request it of me. Okay. So if you're interested in learning backshifting, which is a feature of English grammar on reported speech, you can message me. Okay. But anyway, if there's something new in the target language, the language learner will experience a problem, but not as much as split. The most difficult is split. The second most difficult would be when there's something new. Then, when there is something absent, it's present in the first language, it's absent in the target language. For example, in Filipino, intentional versus unintentional, we have that in grammar. So, hinuli ko siya, nahuli ko siya. So, nahuli is unintentional, hinuli is intentional. But that's not found in English. And so, language learners will find difficulty in expressing themselves that way, but not as much as new and not as much as split. Okay. Later on, I will ask you for features that you see in Tagalog that are of these. Okay. Filipino language learners learning English. Okay. And then we have coalesced. When there are two features in the first language, but it's only found together in the target language. For example, you have yan and yun. Yan, 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 yan. Yun, yun, yun. But in English, it's only one. It's just that. Okay, so that's coalesced. So that's the fourth level of difficulty. The second easiest. And the easiest, of course, if there's correspondence. It's found in the first language, it's found in the target language, like aspect. Kumain, kumakain, and kakain. Okay, that's aspect. That's also found in English. So, it would be the lowest level of difficulty for students of Filipino students learning English. So let me ask you, let's go back to split. Can you give an example of a feature in Tagalog? Sorry, Tagalog gagamitin ko. That's split in English. Maybe it's vocabulary, maybe it's grammar, or maybe it's pronunciation. Anyone? I'll allow you to think. Is there anyone who could share? It's just one in Filipino, but in English, it's two or more.
Hello, sir.
Yes?
Can I try?
Yes, try, Miss Annalisa.
Okay, sir. The word sombrero
Yes, sombrero.
can be a hat or cap. Tama ba, sir?
Okay, that's a good vocabulary example regarding vocabulary. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
In pronunciation, there's difficulty because there's only one in as a vowel in Tagalog, but in English, there are different sounds for the letter A. So you have hot, hat, and hot. That's sorry, that's not the letter A. That's the A. Okay. Filipinos find difficulty there because it's just A for them. Hot. It's hot in my hut. It's hot outside my hut. So I brought a hat. But for Filipinos, that will be it's hot outside my hut. That's why I brought a hat. Okay. It's hot outside my hut. That's why I brought a hat. It's at. But in English, it's really uh, aw, and ah. So they're split there. So it's very difficult for many Filipinos. Okay. So that's the most difficult part. Let's have an example for new, something new. Can you think of something else besides subject-verb agreement, gender on pronouns, backshifting? A feature found in English that's not found in Filipino. Let's have, is that Daryl?
Yes, sir. Allow me to try. How about, sir, on the in English, there are silent letters in pronunciation, but in Filipino, when we speak the words, walang silent na letter. Binibigkas lahat.
That's a good example in writing. Very good example for writing.
Thank you,
Thank
sir.
you, Sir Daryl. Let's have Ma'am Annalisa Sulat.
I'm so sorry, sir. That's my same idea. Because let me just share my husband's what do you call that argument with English. Sabi niya, this is his quote. Bakit ilalagay yung letra kung hindi naman babasahin? That's why he really hates English, sir. I'm so sorry, sir. That
Okay,
is really my
thank you.
idea. He said, like for example, the word Q. I spelled it to him Queue, but you only will spell it U, letter Q. Sabi, where is the UE? It should be Queue. That's why he really hates English.
Okay, okay, yes. It has to do with the history of English. So many reasons why. Another reason is for expressivity. For example, if hat, HAT, it would be pronounced as hat. But if you put E at the end, it would be hate. Okay, so it's helpful to put a silent letter at the E. Okay, the E, hat or hate. Actually, many languages behave like that. It has to do also with the history because in olden times, this is how it's pronounced, but when there was a change, the change in spelling did not include it. For example, one is the word knife. It used to be pronounced as knife. When it became pronounced as knife, the Americans, these language English speakers, decided not to drop the K. Okay. Also, it could be because some prescriptivists in English would they want to English to behave like Spanish, like Latin. For example, if you look at our chat, the spelling for doubt has a B. Doubt. Why is there a B in the word doubt? Because the Latin word for doubt is dubitare. Dubitare. That's the word for doubt in Latin. And many learned people in England wanted English to look like Latin, so they put the B there. The word subtle in Old English used to be pronounced as subtle, double T. But for some reason, they decided to add B. Okay? Oh, I didn't type it. Sorry. So, doubt. Why is there a B in doubt? Because of dubitare in Latin. And subtle, I forgot the explanation for that, but it used to be pronounced as spelled with double T. Let me share with you the introduction to the King James Version, 1611. Oh, here it is. Okay, how do I make this big? There. Let me share this tab. Can you see the the one I shared on the screen?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Yes, sir.
So if you read it, the Holy Bible containing. Do you
Containing.
see the spelling for the word containing? It's a little bit
It
like
has
Tagalog.
Y.
E and
Yes,
Y,
Yes, sir. Contain.
containing the Old Testament.
and
Okay?
testament.
Okay, that is called the long S. It's probably pronounced in the past as testament. Okay. Okay, look at the spelling. It's different. It was a little more logical, but somehow it changed. Okay, let's go back. So that's a good example, very good example. Okay, I think I called everyone who raised their hand. Let's have this one. Absent. Something that's in Tagalog, but it's not, yeah, sorry, it's present in Tagalog but absent in English. Miss Raisa Marquez. Ma'am
Yes,
Raisa.
sir. We have for Filipino we have enye and ng, but in English we don't have that.
Okay. It's absent. So it's in reading also. Okay. Anyone else? It's in Tagalog but it's not found in English. Probably an example I could give would be focus. Nakikain, nakipag-away, nagsiuwian, pinainom. So one student said, I drank my brother the medicine. I drank my brother the medicine. Because pinainom is not in English. So he just said, I drank my brother the medicine. It's absent. Focus is absent in English. So that's a difficulty. Anyone else? I didn't see. Let me see the name. Oh, is that Darrell? Sir Darrell, again, for absent.
Yes, sir. I just would like to share, sir, on our dialect. It's a language, Waray. Is it okay if
Okay,
it's
Waray.
Waray? Yes,
Yes,
sir.
yes.
Sir, in Waray, we have specific terms that we use when, for example, we wash our mouth, we wash our hands, or we wash our feet, or we wash our butt, for example. Halimbawa, sa Waray, maghimgo if it's mouth. Pag halimbawa naghuhugas ng pet, mag-usaw, or ganon. So there are specific words, pero sa English, it's only wash. So I think that's absent in translation.
Okay, that's a nice example. So many words. Okay, an example would be carry. A similar example would be carry in Tagalog. If it's on the head, there's a word for that, I forgot. But if it's in the
Sunong,
arm,
sir. It's sunong. Sunong.
sunong. Okay, sunong niya. Sunong
Yes
niya
po.
yung bilao.
Sunungin or sunungin.
Sunong niya yung
Opo.
bilao. How about if it's in the armpit?
Kilik, sir. Kilik. Kilikin.
Kilik, okay. How
Kilik
about what
or
is kip-kip?
kilikin.
What is kip-kip?
Kip-kip. Yung yayakapin mo ng mahigpit. Opo, yayakapin mo siya ng mahigpit. Kip-kipin. Yes
Kip-kip.
po.
I thought
Yung kip-kip sa
kip-kip.
kilikili po.
Pwede rin sa kilikili, okay? How
Iipit
about if
sa
you put it
kilikili.
over your chest? Like
Sabit.
bow
Isasabit.
or
Isasabit.
sukbit. There's actually a term for that.
Sukbit.
Sukbit, sabit.
Okay?
Sa shoulder,
Sukbit.
sir?
Sa chest. Sa chest.
As chest.
Over your chest. Sukbit. Okay, sukbit. Do you know of anyone else? Buhat, karga. What if you use your palm, like the one in Goldilocks? There's a
Bit-bit.
bit. Okay, bata pa lang may bit na. Okay,
Bit-bit.
so that's carry. Okay, so it's absent in English. Those different words. Okay. Okay, let's have number 2. Coalesced. Can you think of an example? My example a while ago was yan and yun, but it's just that in English. Can you give an example in Tagalog or maybe in your own language, but with
Sir, yung
explanation?
natin. Sir, the word kanin or
Kanin,
rice.
Okay. Yes.
Kaning lamig, bahaw, mumo kapag nalaglag sa mumo ang tawag doon sa amin. Yung mga nanlaglag na sir nasa plato mo, ang tawag na doon sir sa amin, mumo.
Okay.
Kapag lumamig na yung kanin, bahaw na yon, bahaw.
Bahaw. Yes, bahaw.
Sa Bisaya
Pero
din,
sa
ma'am.
English, it's only rice.
It's only rice.
Sa Bisaya din, ma'am. Mumho
Yes,
yan.
sir.
Mumho yung nahulog.
Mumo. Nahulog mumo na siya.
Pwede rin pong maidagdag dun sa mumo yung mga, sabi niyong ganun, yung ano po, pagkahilaw bigas. Pagluto kanin. Pero rice
Bigas.
If it's
Oo,
still on-
bigas.
if
Rice
if
pa
there's
rin
a
sa
husk,
English.
If there's a husk,
Pag sunog na
Palay
po
or
yung
palay.
palay siya.
Palay.
May husk
sunog
pa.
na po yung rice, sir, kasi sa Bisaya.
Tutong.
Okay, totoo.
Dukot
No?
pa.
In Tagalog, it's tutong.
Okay.
But it's
Dukot.
all rice in English.
So it's coalesced, okay? Another example is in Filipino, we have inclusive and exclusive we. We have tayo and we have kami. Okay, but in English, it's just we. Okay, how about in Waray? What's tayo and kami? Right. Sir Darrell.
Sorry, sir, I cannot think of any terms on
No, no,
coalesced. Ay,
no.
sorry.
I'm thinking. I'm asking about tayo and what's that?
Kita.
Tayo and kami. So
Kita.
tayo is kita. How about kami?
Kita pa rin.
Kami. Kami.
Kami
Kami.
gapon.
Opo.
Kami and kita. So kita is tayo, kami is kami. Okay, but in English it's just we.
We.
So that's an example of coalesced.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Ang coalesced ba at saka split, pwede bang para kasi
Baliktad sila. Yung yung split, isa lang sa first language, but it's two in the target language. So my example, the example of Stockwell and company is 4 in English. It's 4 in English, but when you learn Spanish, there's 2 for 4. You have to use por and you have to use para. So it's very difficult to learn that. Okay? So according to Stockwell and company. On the other hand, coalesced is the opposite. You have 2 in the first language, but it's only 1 in the target language.
okay, sir.
Okay, so it's the opposite. Okay. And of course, there's correspondence. When there's aspect. Naglalakad siya nung nahulugan siya ng aratilis. He was walking when the aratilis fruit fell on him. Okay, so that's correspondence. So that's the hierarchy of difficulty. That's an innovation by Stockwell, Martin, and Bowen on the theory of Robert Lado. So remember, the principle is where there's difference, the learner will find difficulty. When there is no difference, when there's similarity, the learner will find ease. Okay. So what's the impact of this on materials development when you write modules? How many of you were asked to write a module? Okay, which for me is a very ridiculous thing, to ask teachers to write modules when there are already books
Yes,
available.
sir. Yes, true.
Yes,
I find
sir.
it very, very ridiculous. It's really
Pwede po bang
ridiculous.
magtanong, sir?
Yes.
Dun sa 5 sir,
Okay.
tanong ko lang po kung saan na po fall ang term na ito kasi sa Bisaya, yung langgam is ant. But in Tagalog, yung langgam is a bird. Sa amin, sa Bisaya, ang langgam is ant. So, saan po ba siya na-fall sa... Pwede po ba siya sa correspond? Ay, hindi ko sa...
Hindi yan na-cover ng hindi yan na-cover ng... Maganda, idagdag mo yan. Pwede mong gawing yan. Pwede mong gawing research article yan. Hindi na-cover ng yan eh. It's not covered in the 5.
Okay, sir.
It's
Thank
not
you.
covered because the language they used were European languages, which are not similar. Unlike Philippine languages, it could even be the opposite. In one language, wala means meron. Diba? There are languages in the Philippines where wala means meron, where it means there is. Okay, it's not covered by the 5 hierarchies of difficulty. That's a good observation. Thank you very much. Who did that? Who was that?
Annalisa Sulusod, sir.
Okay, thank you, Ma'am Annalisa. Ma'am Salusod.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so hindi siya na-cover nung 5 na yon kasi hindi na-encounter ng mga Europeans yung ganun eh. Yung mga languages nila medyo iba eh. Unlike dito sa Filipino, napaka-similar dito. Okay? So, ano impact nito? What's the impact of this on materials development when you make a module? Well, according to Robert Lado, and other proponents of contrastive analysis, the most efficient materials are those that are based upon a scientific description of the language to be learned, carefully compared with a parallel description of the native language of the learner. So you write a scientific description of English, you write a grammar of English, and you compare it with the grammar of Tagalog, and you imagine where there are differences. And knowing that there are differences, language learners would experience difficulty in doing that. And that means you could pay attention to those features of English that Filipinos will find difficult to learn. So contrastive analysis had an immediate application. It was so popular that even in PNU, in the old curriculum, there's one entire subject entitled contrastive analysis. The goal is to produce materials that would highlight the differences, that would address the differences in English and Tagalog, English and Waray, English and something else, some other language. One entire subject in the MA level. Okay, that's how popular, that's how logical contrastive analysis is. And it has an immediate application in materials development. Like you focus on the differences between two languages and you write your module, you write your material based on those differences. Okay. However, contrastive analysis hypothesis had many mispredictions. First, it predicted difficulties that did not happen. Okay, it found differences in two languages, and it predicted that language learners will find difficulty in that feature. But in reality, the language learners did not find difficulty. So it was counterintuitive, it was counter-logical. So why is it that they did not find any problem with that? It's supposed to be difficult. Another counter-logical, illogical, counterintuitive misprediction is that it failed to predict difficulties that happened. There were cases where all the language learner had to do was replace the words in a sentence. Replace the French words in a sentence with English words. And yet, the language learner found difficulty in doing so. It seems straightforward, but the language learners still experience difficulties. And of course, it got it right on some predictions. So it looked hit and miss. So eventually, contrastive analysis hypothesis came out of style. It became obsolete, especially with the coming of Noam Chomsky and Innitism. But it's still logical. It still sounds logical, very logical, that you base your materials on the difficulties. However, you will realize that when it comes to language, there are so many illogical things. There are so many counterintuitive ideas. You expect that this is what will happen, but in reality, in actual situations, it's not the one that you expect. Okay, so armchair speculation is very inapplicable in language learning. Okay, that's because one explanation now as to the failure of the contrastive analysis hypothesis is one cannot depend on the analysis of a linguistic product to yield meaningful insight into a psycholinguistic process. Linguistic is something structural, but language learning is a psycholinguistic process. So according to Long and Sato, you cannot predict behavior based on structure. It would be like saying, just because Nena has long legs means that she can run fast. Or if Carlo has a big head, he's very intelligent. Or if Carla, her talking voice is very deep, she's probably an alto. But there are many cases where I know of a women, their speaking voice is deep, but their singing voice is very high. Soprano sila. Even though when they talk, it's as if, it's almost like you're listening to a man. But when they sing soprano. Okay? Or if somebody has a lot of teeth, then he's very fond of eating. So you cannot base human behavior on structure. On animals, definitely you can. You can base behavior based on structure. If an animal has long legs, probably it can run fast, but not so with human beings. Okay, so a linguistic product is something structural, but the psycholinguistic process is something behavioral. You cannot base behavior on structure on human beings. Okay. So contrastive analysis hypothesis, CAH, as a predictive theory failed. But contrastive analysis without the H as an explanatory theory is still useful. So yung CAH, ang tawag doon ay a priori, before the event. Yung contrastive analysis is called a posteriori, after the event. Okay? After the actual event. So contrastive analysis is still useful as an explanatory tool, but not as a predictive tool. So what really went out of style was contrastive analysis hypothesis because it was predictive. But contrastive analysis is still useful, especially in error explanation, in explaining errors. Oh, this error, that error. The contrastive analysis is still useful to a certain degree. And finally, contrastive analysis hypothesis is still very true when it comes to pronunciation, just like behaviorism. Everything that contrastive analysis hypothesis said is still true in pronunciation. Everything that behaviorism says is still true when it comes to pronunciation. So they're still very useful. They're still very understandable. Okay. Okay. So do you have any questions, class? Any questions? Contrastive analysis.